morning, world. I'm Steve Rao, the host of Pod TV's World Edition, soon to be a part of the Roku television network, effective March 1st. I greet you live from Morrisville, the All-America city in North Carolina, the 8th largest state in the United States of America. And on World Edition, we bring you news from around the world. We talk about innovation and continue our discussions on what a post-COVID world would look like, economically, politically, culturally, as we continue to deal with the pandemic. And we pray for anyone around the world who has lost a loved one or is suffering from illness. Today, we're going to talk about the pending situation in Ukraine. All of us were on the edge of our seats as 150,000 Russian troops sit on the Ukraine border, ready to pounce on Ukraine at the order of the Premier of Russia, Vladimir Putin. But yesterday, all of us were surprised when Putin called for de-escalation of troops in the Ukraine, sending them back to their bases, but continuing military exercises. All of us started wondering, many political analysts, whether this was a bluff all along. In fact, it's something to consider that Putin has more reasons to not invade Ukraine. We've talked on the show about the devastation that would have on the Russian economy, much of Europe, which would go right into an energy crisis. Oil prices could go up, like after the Persian Gulf War, up to 17%, and prices for oil are already at $100 a barrel. There also would be tremendous casualties on both sides. And also, Putin must sense a strong sense of Ukrainian nationalism, that they are not unwilling to give up the independence of their nation. But another insight that I think we should talk about today is, has Putin actually gained more by threatening to go to war and not go to war? He's already receiving concessions. President Zelensky of the Ukraine is saying that NATO may be off the table. And President Biden is saying that he also may want to enter into some new arms control negotiations with Russia. At the end of the day, wars are often about timing. And it could also be that the unification and synchronized efforts of our allies in Europe and Asia, along with the United States, have shown Russia that we will take any attack on Ukraine very seriously. Troops have left North Carolina, where I live right now, on to Europe to be prepared for an attack, because we also don't know whether this was just sort of a surprise and that he's actually throwing us a wrench curve and he might go in on Friday. But one thing is certain. This entire situation with Russia and Ukraine has really made us wonder, is the world safer today? Is the new world order one in which we feel confident and safe that we can live in peace and not go to bed at night worrying that we could be on the brink of World War III? This invasion would be the largest invasion in Western Europe since World War II. And so we pray for our troops who are on their way to Ukraine. We pray for Ukraine, and we hope that diplomacy at the end of the day will prevail, and that Secretary Blinken, on behalf of the President of the United States, will work out a deal with Ukraine along with our allies, and that we can continue to work together to deal with this pandemic. We'll be dealing with this today on this show, and with us today we have our esteemed guest. We have today Chris Gecko, a retired Lieutenant Colonel in the United States Air Force, who will be providing us some analysis as a member of the military. We thank you for your service to our nation, Lieutenant Colonel. We have Mark Lee, the co-producer of this show, and Nick Paladiva, the founder of the IBM TV network.
Now we have one other one as well.
Tasha Star.
Canada, from yes. Canada, who is a Russian expert as an immigrant from Russia to Canada. We're going to start with, first let's start with our guest, Chris Greco, and let's get started. So, Chris, as someone with military background and experience, what are your thoughts of the situation? Do you believe it's a bluff, or do you think that we're still in a guessing game and that Putin could move in on Friday?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, fellas. I really appreciate it. So, Sasha, good to have you. Good to have you on board, man. It's good to talk with you again. I'd be willing to when we talked about this the last time we talked about this on Monday, it was about the threat of invasion aspects, and I said, as I said on the last show, I was front row seat. I was in a front row seat the last time the Soviets, Soviets invaded, and that was Afghanistan in 1979. I saw a complete and total overwhelming of everything having to do with Afghanistan. It was unbelievable. When the Soviets went in, they went in with everything they had. They went in with fighters. They went in with transport aircraft. They completely overwhelmed Kabul in a matter of days. They had the city, and they were working their way out from that city. Now, basically, it's something like this. It's that I don't know whether any of you gentlemen have read Malcolm Gladwell's What the Dog Saw. But basically, one of the stories that he talks about is Hitler. And he says, everybody that met with Hitler thought he was just a nice old guy. Hey, he's a nice guy. He's just a nice old, I mean, why would anybody? Neville Chamberlain went over, came back and said, hey, we got peace in our time. The guy signed, everything's cool, whatever else. Churchill never met with Hitler and said, the guy's basically, he's a liar and he's mentally unstable. We got to act on that situation. And I'm afraid that's the same with Putin. Vladimir Putin, everybody that meets with this guy, Macron and everyone else says, this guy he doesn't want to attack. He certainly doesn't want to do anything that's going to, disrupt European aspects and everything else. And I will say what I said before. Mr. Putin is going to invade Ukraine. Absolutely no question about it. Now, Sasha brought up the fact that what we should have done in the beginning of this whole thing, which I totally agree, was we should have told them, look, you got 48 hours to pull back. If you don't pull back in 48 hours, we are going to put such economic sanctions on you, you will not be able to breathe. That's what should have happened in the beginning. Well, we didn't do that. So now we got troops going in a reactive sense rather than a proactive mode. And now we're going to sit back and say, okay, what do we have? So it's, you notice no fighter jets are put back to garrison. The equipment's still there. He's playing. I don't think he's playing a bluff at all. But that's, again, my opinion.
Hey, Chris.
That's okay. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, Chris, I just had a quick question for you. Well, one, I also want to thank you for your service and everything. And I'm sometimes surprised at the way that the military works. I have a cousin that was in the military. He retired and now a consultant, but he made it up, I believe, to lieutenant colonel. And then y'all have this entire system of I call it like 3 or 4 shots. And if you don't make it, then you have to move into the civilian sector. So unfortunately, even though I know that he was dreaming of becoming a full colonel or at least a general, he did not quite make it, even though that was his goal and everything. But I do know that happens. But don't know if you got any comments on that. But my question for you is there how much is there really this kind of global positioning and global world politics that goes on as much as it used to be? Because I know that before it was very much a conversation that we would always hear about, whether it was the Soviets, whether it was other parts of the world. But I don't even know that our school kids are learning about the global community. So I was wondering, in your mind, as one that served in the military, how important, and do you feel that we're learning enough about the geopolitical dynamics that exist in the world? I guess that's the best way of putting it.
I'll tell you, I am so glad. I'm so glad you brought that up. I just wrote an essay for Harvard as part of their contest on the National Security Act of 2022, how it would differ from the National Security Act of 1947. And one of the things I brought up was that people need to be educated. Sasha, let me tell you something. Sasha understands totally and completely what goes on in Europe. He was there. He was in the midst of this whole situation. But I will ask you, if you go down the street and you ask 20 people where Ukraine is, they would have no idea. No idea. They would say, well, it's in Eastern Europe. Where? Where's in Eastern Europe? Where does it go? What does it border? All these different areas. Why is it strategically important? So I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I want to go to Sasha, and I'm going to ask you a question because I think this is something we don't talk about. So I'm going to take us back to 1991. I'm at Emory University. I'm actually graduating that year, taking a class in U.S. foreign policy towards Soviet Union. I can't remember the name of the professor, but he worked in President Carter's administration. December 26, 1991, Soviet Union dissolved. Gorbachev announced, who actually spoke at our graduation in May, he announced he was leaving as the 8th premier of the Soviet Union. How do we get to where we are now from there. I mean, I wish I was a political science student in Emory today. I actually want to go back to Emory and listen to the same class that I took. But I mean, is it just the fact, that Putin just wants to bring back these territories into what used to be the Soviet Union? Is it nationalism? I mean, I don't know. I'm just trying to. We don't talk about that enough, but you know, we've gone back like full circle to what it was before the Cold War, and I just having a hard time understanding why.
Steve, first of all, practical advice. Don't waste your time and money with Emory University or anything like that, because most of the professors, they don't know when it comes to Russia or Ukraine what they're talking about. So
Okay.
please play golf, do some other nice things. Don't waste your time and money.
But they have PhDs, Sasha.
Yeah.
They have dissertations they've written.
That's fine. That's fine. It doesn't matter really much. So with PhD, they're making a little bit more money than average professor, but neither of them don't know. There are a few professors who do know, but there are very, very few of them.
But why is it happening, Sasha? Why? Why? I thought that
They don't
perestroika.
understand the history, the nature of Russia. They do not. That's why they cannot read Putin's moves and where he's coming from. They have no clue whatsoever. Don't forget that Russia was under the Mongols and Tatars for 250 years. That's the only one of the European countries that never had a renaissance. This is a country which, although people look somewhat European, but by nature, by history, they are Asians. They are their system of government, always with Tsars, with communists, now with Putin. It's a model of Asian, Mongol, Genghis Khan system. That's
Okay.
why they will always have Tsar, or if not Tsar, then President Putin, and so on. That's a system of government completely different from the West. And therefore, Russia and West will never understand each other. That's why they will always be enemies. That's why there was a big blunder on Bush elder, where in 1991, the Soviet Union ceased to exist, he failed to engrave in stone. Here is a Cold War is over. Here is a loser, which is a Soviet Union. And as a loser, you have to pay reparations. You have to give up all your nuclear armed forces. And several other things should have been done, and he failed to do that. And Clinton, when he just took over the power, he failed to do the same. But the Bush is even more guilty because it was on his watch, and he had to immediately jump in. Now, comes 2014. Russia invaded the territory of other country, which never happened in Europe since 1945. So instead of reacting as to immediately, not even in 72 hours, in 48 hours, remove every soldier, every weapon from the Ukrainian territory, which at that time Crimea was. There was a Budapest Pact of 1994 where Ukraine, think about that, Ukraine gave up its nuclear forces, which were, by the way, the third in the world after US and Soviet Union. They gave it all to whom? To its future enemy, Russia. What
Well,
for?
and
What
let me
for? Do you
before we go
remember?
to. No, I don't remember. But
So ask
let's go.
me. Ask me. I
Chris,
will tell you, or you're not
tell me.
interested.
You tell me. Tell me.
No, you guess. You guess. That's happened. Now you tell me why Ukraine gave up its nuclear arsenal to its arch enemy. How has that happened?
Okay, we're listening. Obviously, we're listening to the arguments from the West. Okay, and you're not listening to the arguments from the East because no one goes on the Eastern blocks and talks to them, which I do, by the way. By the way, this is being broadcast, and we're getting a lot of responses from Lithuania and Ukraine. For some reason,
Oh,
Lithuania and
wonderful. Well,
Ukraine watch this show. But let me tell you about China. who also doesn't watch the show because we can't beam in, but does make comments independently. Here's their thoughts from China. What are you guys even talking about? Who's the aggressor? Where is NATO? They're in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. They're surrounding Russia right now. NATO is. Okay. And so what are you guys even talking about aggression? What about Afghanistan? Who invaded Afghanistan last? Wasn't the United States? Then they go to what about the U.S. bombing Laos and leaving bombs still there? What about that? Now, with that, this is the arguments from Russia's best friend, China, that the aggressor here is not Russia. It's actually the United States of America with their NATO. And they said this, I'm giving you the reports from the East. How would you like it if the Warsaw Pact put missiles in Venezuela and Cuba? You wouldn't like it, would you, so much, America?
Hey, Nick.
By the way, these are all arguments, and they're coaching.
No, I hear those are arguments and
They're
everything,
They're coming from our friends in the East. In the meantime, we ignore them. In other words, we're ignoring the arguments from the East. So what I want to hear, because I'm on China's sites all the time. Our TV show is not. We are being seen in Ukraine and Russia, but not in China. However, their comments relating to this are what I just described. What are you guys talking about? What is this American propaganda?
But speaking of which, I'm going to toss it back to Steve, and I also want to bring back our other buddy, David Rowley, who's here, and everything.
Scotland.
Yeah,
Scotland has no problem with the United ever.
Let me take back. Well, Nick, you take that perspective. David, welcome to the show. I'm going to ask.
Thank you. Thank you.
Chris, I'm going to go back to you, and then we're going to have David. But I want you to respond first of all. After I ask you a question, maybe take a guess at the question Sasha asked. I'm going to let you guess. But I love boxing analogies, and I love boxing. And my favorite boxing matches: Rocky fighting Ivan Drago, or in Creed, Creed fighting Drago's son. And I'm going to run to that music this afternoon, Adonis Creed. This whole notion of boxing, like you take body blows. So rather than going for the knockout punch, you try to wear people out. And so there is some people that say that what Putin is going to do is he's going to attack Ukraine in smaller ways by going after, for example, the Donbas region, which is a disputed area. And so taking him with body blows that actually hurt Ukraine eventually. And they go, okay, you can have it, right? So do you think that's the strategy here? That he's not going after the knockout punch, but he's going to chip at the body?
I think he saw a weakness in your president, Joe Biden. Let me tell you what the weakness is. It's Afghanistan. It's
Joe
Afghanistan.
Biden weak?
Oh, come on. You gave up Afghanistan. That was horrible. First of all, Afghanistan strategically sits right on the border of China. Talk about a sore thumb. Second, we had trillions invested in that country. And Joe Biden, the weak president he was, goes, we're just going to leave. No, you don't leave. You stay there. You're the conquering country. You stay there, buddy. So it was the weakness of Joe Biden that caused the troops to surround Ukraine.
But sorry, he doesn't cancel Trump's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. It's Trump who decided to pull out of Afghanistan. So Biden actually had to
the weakness of Trump and Biden. It's the weakness of America. When you're in a country like Afghanistan, and you've got
then Barack Obama was not much better because Crimea happened on his watch. So what are we talking about? U.S. who have zero in president's presentation? They are all dumb and stupid people.
And that's
Barack Obama, to Trump, and to Biden.
Let me ask that, Sasha. If you were president of the United States, wait a minute, Sasha. If you were president of the United States, would you have abandoned Afghanistan, Counselor?
I wouldn't invade Afghanistan.
But you're there now.
But once you're there, I would keep it, and I would have to just really figure out all the nice, bold, and efficient strategy of keeping and controlling Afghanistan and get a lot of mileage out of it. It's economical.
Okay. You're talking about, Sasha, we're talking about the history of great countries. Do you see the history of great countries retreating? No. They get there, they stay there, and they exercise strong leadership, which the United States is not doing when they pulled out of Afghanistan. And that's part of the reason Putin smell blood
Before
in
we
Ukraine.
before
No,
Chris,
I've got a quick
hold
question
on for
for you
one
and
second. Let's
everything.
go to Dave. Let's go to Dave Ryle. He's been waiting patiently. We're going to hear from him, and then going to go
Yes.
Chris, and then back to Mark.
Okay,
Dave,
yeah, we'll hear
please.
from
David.
David.
Hi, thank you very much for welcoming me here. I've obviously just arrived in the conversation, but just going on the back of what you were just saying, Nick. I think Afghanistan should be a stain on all our consciences. Here in the West, because I think it's utterly shameful that the West, and be it Biden, Obama, or the Donald, I think it's shameful that anything pulled out because they've left the poorest country in the world with next to nothing, and we went in there to establish regime change, and etc. And we achieved diddly squat, and I think it should be in all our consciousness that Afghanistan's a mess. And I was really interested what Nick just said, whether or not Afghanistan has encouraged Putin to smell blood in Ukraine, and whether that's had an impact on his goal in the region.
Yeah, no doubt about it. By the way, before we get to Chris and everything, I was going to let y'all know that David is an amazing podcaster and also is a disabilities advocate as well, because definitely
Wonderful.
that is something that he does on a regular basis coming from Scotland. So if we got any things that we want to address around the disability community, David is definitely a great person to talk about that, because he's been doing this
David,
for decades, if not longer. But I know he's been doing it for a while.
Thank you so much. So, Chris, go ahead and respond to that. I mean, as your military experience in terms of Afghanistan, things started going south for the president around July or August of last year with Afghanistan, Delta variant, inflation. But do you believe that this has given this is a stain on American foreign policy, and do you believe it's affecting our ability to deal with Russia?
Okay, so I was in intelligence. So because I was in intelligence, we did a lot of things. One thing we did was profile leaders. We profiled a lot of leaders. And let me profile Joe Biden for you here for a second. Joe Biden voted against the 1991 Desert Storm invasion. He voted against that. He said we shouldn't kill Osama bin Laden. He tries to put he's a Catholic. I'm a Catholic. He tries to put his Catholicism into place here. So he tries to do everything from a standpoint of we don't want to hurt anybody. And he takes his call when President Obama and Kerry, the Secretary of State at that time, they said, look, we're going to go into Syria. If you don't get rid of your chemical weapons within 24 hours, if that's a red line, or if we're giving you 24 hours to do whatever, and then all of a sudden this red line just kept moving back and back and back. Let me tell you something about Europe, and Sasha will agree with me. Europe has a long memory. They remember things that you and I may have read about in a history book, and that was it. Their predecessors, they lived this stuff. Let me give you a quick story, and then honestly, I'll shut up. My next door neighbor was an Italian. He was Italian, and he came over to me one time when Italy was playing France in the World Cup, and he goes, Chris, he says, you'll never believe it. I said, what happened? He says, oh, that the French guy, he says, he chested the Italian and knocked him down, everything. He says, it's amazing. He says, they kidnapped the Pope. And I said, what? They kidnapped the Pope? And he says, yes. He says, I said, when did this happen? He says, oh, about 500 years ago. I said, hey. I said, I think it's time. I think it's time to let that one go. I think it's time to let that. He goes, no. He goes, I'm telling you. He says, his name was Giuseppe. I said, Giuseppe, you got to call me Satan. No, they kidnapped the Pope. And then I said, no, that's 500 years ago, dude. time to see. Americans don't have a long memory.
That's right.
You know, Europe does. And let me
But
tell you
speaking of
something.
that now long memory, I did have a quick question for you, Chris, and everything, which is there's been a lot of talk, and this comes back to the world landscape and everything, that we have seen a rise both here in the United States as well as around the world in nationalism. So I was wondering your thoughts about this. Is this something that we need to be concerned about? Because whether it's Brexit, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's a number of other things, we've seen a rise in nationalism, and sometimes it might be specific types of nationalism. Like some people would say Black Lives Matters is a form of Black nationalism and things of that nature. But I was just wondering your thoughts and everything about this rise in nationalism around the world.
Well, I'm just going to, this is my opinion, okay, based on history, based on my time in the military, everything else. Germany won World War II. Germany won World War II. Took them 70 years, 80 years to do it, but they've won it. They basically have the economic control of Europe. Now, France can sit there and say, oh, we do. No, Germany does. Germany, they have manufacturing, they have service aspects, they do all these things that they basically control it. Okay, they get 30 to 40% of their fuel, of their natural gas from Russia. 30 to 40% through Ukraine. Now, Ukraine said, hey, look, we don't want any problem here. Russia, we're going to continue the pipeline, even though you're sitting at our border with a bunch of military people. So we're not going to mess you over on that. And Germany is sitting back going, well, as long as everything's okay, we're okay. We're going to sit back and say, yay, NATO. But bottom line is there's going to be a lot of nationalism within Germany and within some of these other countries. And one more thing. You talk about nationalism. I don't know how many years ago it was, but Estonia, right? Estonia, big, little country, but everything was based on cyber. Everything their money was based on cyber. Their driver's license, whatever else. They had a cyber attack that completely shut down the country, completely shut them down for 24 to 48 hours because of a cyber attack. That's exactly what I would do if I were Putin. I would shut the Ukraine down. I would make it so they're dark, so that they have no power or nothing. And then I'd go in.
Chris, you said something very interesting because my wife.
Thank you, Chris.
My wife is Scottish. Okay, so David will appreciate this. Okay, and I've been to Scotland, been to Edinburgh, Glasgow, Inverness, and all the cities. Scotland the Scottish do not consider themselves to be British at all, or having anything to do with the United Kingdom. They're still fighting Culloden. They're still smarting over some battle that took place in 1700. And I had to go see the battlefield of Culloden. I said, "What's this?" It's Stirling Bridge. Oh, the Brits are attacking us. They're still attacking us. I go, dude, this is overall. No one in the world thinks you guys have anything to do except you're all together. No, we hate the Brits. They're down there. Let them go. So I think David would appreciate that.
And speaking of that, I was wondering what David's opinion is of just the whole global world and what is going on in his mind, since he is a podcaster there in Scotland. And I do know that there are some great divisions that are in that United Kingdom area, whether it's Scotland, whether it's Ireland, which has been at a war with the UK, seems like for thousands of years, if not longer, but it just seems like it's been going on forever. But what is your thoughts about Scotland and how things are going there in Scotland in a political standpoint? I'd love to hear from the voice of Scotland.
Chris, I think over the last 10 years, there's been a great rise in nationalism in general. And it started, I don't know where it started, but we've seen it in America with the rise of the Donald, and we've seen it in Europe and Brexit. That was all fueled by nationalism. And, back in 2014, we had an independence referendum again, fueled by nationalism. And if our great leader has her way, we're going to be doing it all. We're going to be doing it all over again really soon. And I do wonder and I worry, because personally, I find that it's not a nice thing. I think nationalism is one of the most divisive things
Right.
that that we can do, and history has shown that as it's been nationalism that's fueled wars in the past and will fuel war again in the future, and so I made no secret as that I'm completely British and I want to stay British. Because I think nationalism is it's a really dangerous, divisive, nasty thing, and I don't want to be part of it.
Thank you
Yeah,
so much, David.
and if you want to see a lot of nationalism, go to the website Understanding China, and you'll find out they're Chinese. They want to beat us. Go to their. It's on Facebook. Go to join the Facebook group Understanding China, and you'll understand this. China is gunning for us. Period.
Wow.
Wonderful,
Okay.
wonderful. Hey, well, let's go. Let's go back to let's go. Let's take a quick break, and we're going to do our Black History Leader of the Month. I mean, every day we're going to talk as we celebrate Black History Month. Come back to Ukraine, and then we'll talk about some other things going on in the world. Mark, do you have a Black History Leader for us today to talk about, or just to share?
Today, I think we should go with one that is definitely a well-known leader, but a lot of people do not always think about his thoughts, and he actually changed his thoughts a lot. I know a lot of times people will think about Martin Luther King and everything along those lines, but I did go to school at a school that was named after Malcolm X, and a lot of people think of Malcolm X as being this very militant leader, and yes, he was militant at one point, but a lot of people forget that later on in his life, he did make a journey to Jerusalem and to the Israel area, where he saw people that were of a lighter complexion than himself, and it actually changed kind of his views about race and race relations. So it was, and unfortunately, he was killed shortly thereafter. Ironically, the other person that I mentioned, Martin Luther King, had also said that he was not as much in favor of a certain war that was going on. So a lot of and actually felt that integration might have been one of the worst things that we did, because he said that we might have integrated ourselves into a burning house. That's actually a quote from him and everything. So those would be the two leaders. And of course, a lot of times folks oftentimes put them together. But I would love to hear folks' thoughts about those two great leaders that were having different styles. One being more of a pacifist, activist kind of person, that being Martin Luther King, the other being much more militant, that being Malcolm X. But definitely, I think that toward the end of their lives, they were finding some common ground and some more similarities than people are actually aware of.
Absolutely. I mean, and but thank you for sharing that. And real quickly around the world, we always do this on World Edition. Well, first of all, U.S. hockey out of the Olympics, lost to Slovakia, but the United States women is playing Finland. The issue of the day in Beijing is, speaking of Russia, Kamila, I don't know how I spell her name, Valeva, who tested positive for performance enhancing drugs, was still allowed to compete. And guess what? She's leading the competition. I mean, she could win gold medals. So what's going to happen? People are really upset that she's still competing, but 15 years old and, there. And then on a political front, we're still waiting for President Biden's nomination to the Supreme Court, but it does look like 30 Democrats are not running again for re-election, which makes it even worse a scenario for the Democrats to hold on to seats in the House and Senate. It really does look like if things continue the way they are, we could have a Democratic president and a Republican House and Senate, which is what we had when Newt Gingrich was Speaker of the House and Bill Clinton was President of the United States. And by the way, tonight at 7 o'clock, we'll be talking about the worst president of the United States, and it's down to Biden, Trump, Kennedy, and Clinton. Those are the four, with Trump in a serious lead to be the worst president. But I'm just the moderator. I'm not giving my opinion.
Steve, may I suggest a small correction? United States women's team is going to play not Finland, but rather Canada.
I apologize.
Okay, small correction, that's all.
Canada. How can I forget? Well, I had a little brain moment there. Sorry, I am human, but Canada, and we congratulate Canada, and of course Canada. Hockey place, right? Mecca for hockey.
Hey,
So let's get back to our discussion. So anything around the world that you all want to talk about or
well, not so
insightful?
much around the world, but I do have to tease. And this, like I said, we're gonna have a light moment here because I just found this to be totally hilarious. I was sharing it with a friend of mine and everything, and it's actually made even LinkedIn news and everything. But Nick, we oftentimes talk on Mondays about media and the power of media. Guess what? There is a very long time product. I mean, it's been in everybody's household. I probably got some and around my household here as well, somewhere and everything that has finally gone viral in 2022. It has gone viral because apparently there's a whole concept of what you can do with it and everything. But believe it or not, Nick, are you ready for this? Vaseline, that staple of everybody's grandpa's medicine cabinet, has found a new fan base on TikTok and Instagram because apparently a bunch of beauty influencers are promoting it as the go-to product for something called slugging, where apparently you put it all over your body and make you feel really have soft skin and all of that. But it has
Ah,
gone majorly crazy and everything, and this has become like a media darling. So Vaseline, after 100 and whatever years that is, has gone viral.
Vicks Vapo Rub.
Okay.
Vicks Vapor Rub. You put it on your feet. It keeps them nice and moist. I'm not kidding. It works.
Okay. All right.
oh,
All
there
right.
you go.
That's really important
Beauty
for our
tips for the
viewers.
media. I actually
Yeah.
have to shave now that I'm on state TV. I have to shave like 4 times that day,
Oh,
and I always have this one spot I miss. And I saw my mom and dad the other day, and they go, "My God, he's clean shaven. What's wrong?" I'm like,
Yeah.
"What
I
are you
mean,
But
this
going
is
on
to
a
do?"
very,
serious
very
note,
important.
on a
By the
serious
way,
note, we'll get
Mark,
back to some other serious
Vaseline is very
news and everything.
important for our
But
viewers in Scotland, Ukraine, Lithuania. They're about to be blown to smithereens. Okay. So just remember, Vaseline will protect you.
So
yes, it will protect you
let's
apparently.
get
And
back.
the social media mentions went up 327%. And I think these are global companies that are talking about
well,
this. So apparently it's become like a global thing.
I will tell you a military use of Vaseline. We used to use it a lot as a lubrication. We used to put it on the gears in our equipment. We used to put it in different areas. And let me tell you something, it could get below zero. And Vaseline would continue to lubricate those areas. And let me tell you, I'll bet you money that Russia is probably, sorry, I always refer to them as Soviets, are probably using those on the equipment, over there in Ukraine right now.
I got some fun.
Let's not
I
get
got,
into the personal use of Vaseline
yeah,
on the
I
show
got some
today
funny.
in
I
the
got some
military.
funny thoughts rolling in my head, but as the host of the show, I'm not going to say them out loud. All I got to
Got
say
it.
is, as a nasty ranked, as a tennis player, one day, one of my he passed away 11 years ago. He was 12 years my best friend. They saw a bag of Vaseline in my tennis bag. We're just teasing me left and right. It was just because I had dry skin, and that's all I heard the next day. I was like,
I would
"Oh,
like to
God."
make a comment,
Go.
Mark, on Martin Luther King.
Yes.
Martin Luther King was very much, and it is in his writings.
Mhm.
He was very much against communism.
Yes,
He
that's
was a stalwart against communism. He did not. He felt that was the demise of whatever he was doing in the civil rights arena. That communism would, in fact, destroy everything that he was trying to do, and he didn't want that to creep in to any of his speeches or any of his following.
I don't
So-
get why. I mean, I don't get why America has such mania against communism. I mean, to the point it's insane, Chris.
Bad.
It's all bad. It's not all bad.
Bad.
Okay,
Remember
It's
Dana
not
Carvey?
all bad.
Remember Dana Carvey doing
The problem is they had that crazy un-American activities. This crazy. When I grew up, I heard the crazy
True.
communism. It's like this evil thing. It's not that evil thing.
Remember
Well, I've
Dana?
got two
I never-
questions that I've got to ask about
You
that.
had
And
the
I'd love to hear
you had
Chris's
capitalists
thoughts about both
strangling
of these.
You had capitalists
We get
literally
off into
strangling
some very
people,
serious
and then
topics and
people are saying
everything.
communism is
Okay,
bad.
sorry,
But
It's
I've
not
got
bad
two
when you're
very
being
quick
strangled.
questions
I'm sorry.
that I'd love to hear Chris's thoughts about. One is,
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you that Martin Luther King was definitely not a friend of the communism. I also understand that he wasn't a friend of the Vietnam War either. But there were some national leaders and some people would say that this is still happening today. but there were some national leaders and in some cases international leaders that brought some viewpoints that were similar to, like, I won't say communism, but maybe more like socialism, and they actually brought them into our government and everything. There were some people that would argue, and I would actually agree with them, that the Black Panthers are part of the reason that we have some of our food programs, because they actually were doing that originally in California before it became national programs and things along those lines. And they had done that as independents there in Oakland, where they had created some of that. And now some of their other views might have been more militaristic in the sense of what they were trying to do. And I don't think anybody can deny that if you study the history of some of the leaders like Bobby Seals and some of the others. But as one that was in the government, I would just start wondering your thoughts about some of the government programs that were to some degree targeted against our own citizens. I have always been a student of COINTELPRO, which was something that was going on in our country, which is kind of like the Hoover kind of thing against our civil rights leaders. But I was just wondering, is that something that even y'all studied in military history? I've never got a chance to ask my cousin, even though he's still living, but you're here, so I'm gonna ask you now. So is that something even that y'all study, that aspect of what was going on in our own history?
Well, the intelligence I was involved with was basically foreign intelligence. In fact, we were not allowed to do any domestic intelligence whatsoever. In fact, we had specific protocols, specific directives, which I can't go into detail, but I can tell you that people that accidentally got anything from the standpoint of other than foreign intelligence would report that immediately, and everything would be scrubbed. We were not allowed to do that. It just was not. It was not cool. So that was basically FBI. FBI and CIA was not supposed to do it. Now, I'm not saying that they did, but the FBI were the keepers of domestic intelligence. They were the ones that would feed reports to us about domestic aspects, but we could not do that in any way, shape, or form. So that was
just one quick question, then I'm gonna get off this soapbox and everything. I do remember that when the invasion took place of I want to say it was Afghanistan and some of those other places, some people went into the castles, and I had heard all kinds of things about what was actually in those places and everything that Sudan had and all of that. But I was just wondering how much of that was fiction and how much of that was real, because I was hearing stories of like gold-plated bathrooms and a bunch of other things that may or may not have existed, and how much of that was part of what y'all were doing there in those military kind of endeavors.
Saddam Hussein was very much a paranoid guy. Again, we profiled this guy, but he was big on riches. So whatever he could get gold plated, he got gold plated. I mean, if it was part of the wall, it was basically gold plated, because that's what his power was all about. So I mean, money was a big deal to him from that standpoint, and showing people that he had power through money. That was a big deal. So
are you talking about Donald Trump, or who are you talking about
now?
You're talking about gold-plated bathrooms and power through money. Is this Donald Trump, or who's the guy you're talking about?
I got to tell you, Drake's airplane also has gold-plated stuff. I just thought I'd throw that out at you. I know that because I've seen it. But yeah,
Drake the rapper.
Yes, Drake the rapper.
Okay, so you have another power monger.
There you go.
Which, by the way, this again the reason why communism exists. You can't strangle the population, and they're doing that in the United States right now when 50% of the population can't get a hold of $1,000. I mean that's a big strangulation here, and it's something that we bring up on our show, right. And it keeps increasing as the 1% grabs more and more of the booty and the looty, and the rest of the people are eating breadcrumbs. And so the thing is, if it turns communist, it turns communist. You bought and paid for it, rich people. That's what happened in Russia. That's what happened in Cuba. That's what happened with a lot of countries. That's happened in China. And
we'll be talking about Ukraine again on Friday, as hopefully by then we'll see what happened. I'll be on PBS Carolina live for World Edition from the PBS studios in North Carolina on our show. But real quickly, let's talk about the Russian skater. Do you believe, and we'll just go down as my analyst, your opinion, should she be skating or should she not be skating? That's the question. Sasha.
Well, The fact is that she is skating, so then uh, I don't think that my opinion is really important. I think that Russia is undignified. It's skating under, or not only skating, but doing all these Olympics under artificial flag. The no anthem is being performed. I think one of two things should have happened. Either Russia would refuse under this condition to participate, and as a proud nation with the great Putin being a president, that's what I would expect them to do. On the other hand, with everything going on, Olympic Committee should have just banned Russia from Olympics, period, full stop. So in this compromise situation, everything is possible. It's hypocrisy of the first rank.
Okay, thank you. Chris, going to you. What are your thoughts about this?
All I can think of, and Sasha, you'll probably just say, yep, Olga Korbut. That's all I can think about when I think about this is Olga Korbut. Now, those of you that don't know who Olga Korbut is, she was the darling of the gymnastics. She was the Soviet Union's, and she was really good. She ended up with gold medals. I mean, she was just, and I think she was 15 years old at that time, 14 years old. And people, some especially some older people like myself, they're remembering this. They're going, yeah, 15 years old, cut her a break, hey, she got it mixed up with her grandfather's medication. What can I say? Right, Sasha? She got it confused. She had, what did she do? Give her grandfather a peck on the cheek. Next thing you know, she's got the drug in her system.
Chris, that's what she says.
That's right.
Whether it happened in reality, nobody knows. What's her grandfather's medication? Does she have a grandfather? Does she live with the grandfather or so on? There are a lot of questions to be asked. Nobody is going to do this. You see, people at the Olympic Committee, they are all bureaucrats. They're getting their salaries, probably free parking at the major airport. And they don't want to dig into it and figure out what's really happened or so on. They want a trouble-free life and rake more money while they can. That's all.
Well, if I can add my 2 cents worth here and everything, I think that it's a bigger issue than this particular athlete and everything. And I think that we've been seeing it for a while, which is that athletes, and particularly those in the amateur field, need a whole reckoning kind of moment, because there are a lot of issues that are not being addressed by the athletic community that need to be addressed, including dealings with doping, because there's definitely doping in a lot of sports, not just in gymnastics, but a lot of them that are not being enforced, whatever their rules and regulations are. So they need to work on that. They need to work, as Serena and some others have brought out, on the whole thing about mental health and the mental health aspects of sports. And they still have not, in my mind, really addressed the whole issue of some of the abuses that have gone on of some of the young ladies in the sports as well. And not just young ladies. I think there probably been some men that just haven't come out as much as the ladies in terms of some of the abuse by some of the coaches. So that's just 3 issues that I think the sports needs to deal with, particularly on the amateur sides.
Okay, wait a sec. Guys, let's go straight to the issue. Let's not talk all kind of nonsense. We have a limited amount of time left. Don't you remember what's happened in 2014 in Sochi? Don't you remember the investigation? Rodchenkov, who left Russia and now is in the United States, where the state officials were changing the samples, and it was well-organized crime carried by not just sportsmen and their coaches, by KGB people, and that's how Russia operates. It operated as a Soviet Union back in the old days, and they were winning all the Olympiads. Don't you remember East Germany wonder sports team, when they were cleaning up, especially women's team, who were all on steroids? They were winning all medals, gold, silver, and bronze in every sport that they participated. That's how it's done. And why would you think that all of a sudden in 2022, Putin and his Russian enablers would do something different? Why? What makes you think so?
I read in saying that the Russian team are not competing under the Russian Olympic flag, or there's something like that at the moment that they're competing under some other flag or caveat because of Russians, doping past, as Sasha said. So that sets the scene to begin with, and but put that to one side. I think it's only test positive, either accidentally or not in it. The don't compete end of. It's black and white for me. She says positive, so don't compete end of.
Yes, I mean this has been we got a few more minutes left, but this has been we really enjoy having Chris on and Dave today. David, your insight has been remarkable. We're gonna encourage you guys to come back, especially Chris on the military and foreign policy analysis. I definitely need your help. I guess my last question as we begin to move to a closeout of the show is, from a foreign policy perspective, Chris. I'll start with you, Chris. Um, do you believe that the United States of America has a very clearly defined foreign policy at this point? I mean, we're seeing, we talked about Afghanistan today. We're seeing situation in Russia, seeing disruption all over the world in democracy. Is this just the United States? Is this, I don't know. It seems to me that, especially under this president, there's not a really clearly defined foreign policy goal. I'm not seeing President Biden doing anything really differently than what Trump was doing. Do you think that's a problem?
So, so that when we were taught, when I was taught in advanced military school, advanced what they call PME, professional military education, there's something called national will. The national will is what really generates what we do with foreign policy. It was easy. It was relatively easy after World War II. After World War II, we had our enemies. Our enemy was, boom, Soviet Union. That was it. Germany was pretty much gone. Japan was gone. We had Russia. China was still trying to recover from the Japanese invasion and everything else. So they were trying to do that. So national will is what drives foreign policy. What is our national will right now? And I'm going to get very cynical, and I'm sorry, but it's about when are we going to get our Amazon package? What are we going to do about getting the Amazon package? We got it. So if we mess over China, we're never going to get the Amazon package. If we mess with Europe, we're never going to get our Amazon package. So the bottom line is national will is basically we are now a service country. We're not a manufacturing country. We're a service country, which means we service other areas, consulting and doing. I'm sorry to bust on consultants, but consultants, all that stuff. What do we manufacture? We don't manufacture our drugs. India and China do. We don't manufacture other things. So the manufacturing is gone. Foreign policy is based on that. We have to make nicey with everybody because they give us our Amazon packages.
Chris, really quick
Chris,
other
I mean,
question.
That's pretty good, Chris. That's a new foreign policy.
I got one other
The Amazon
quick
package for
I like the Amazon package, but I
it.
got one other quick question for Chris and everything before we wrap up. A lot of our foreign policy seems to be, and don't get me wrong on this, but it seems to be very Eurocentric oriented. A lot of times we spend time focusing on what's going on in Russia, in definitely France, England, a lot of those other places that are in the European theater. We do spend some time on parts of Asia, like India and other things. But I think that we are actually leaving out a significant part of the population, that being Latin America and Africa. I was wondering, as one that has been in that military environment, what your thoughts are about what we're doing in those regions, because I don't think that we even talk about them enough.
Well, so I was in East Africa. I was with the Department of Defense in East Africa. I've never, ever in my lifetime, have seen a poorer country. I mean, poverty was just unbelievable. But what I did learn from there is that the Chinese are coming into those areas, Africa in general and whatever else, and they're putting up a bunch of cell towers. Huawei's going in there. They're putting up cell towers. They're doing all this stuff. They're building an infrastructure. Pretty soon it's going to be, they're building roads pretty soon. And let me tell you what's in Africa. Africa is the richest mineral nation in the world. White gold, lithium, is located in Africa. What do you need lithium for? Everything. If you need lithium for everything, not just grease, not just the lithium grease. You need it for everything. So you got white gold there. You have gold. You have diamonds. You have bauxite, where you cannot make aluminum without bauxite. Can't. You know where the two? You know what they are? Africa and South America. That's where bauxite is. That's where you get it. And you cannot make aluminum without coal, and you can't make aluminum without heat. You cannot make aluminum without fossil fuels. You cannot make steel without fossil fuels. Impossible. You can't do it. So, I mean, you can do it with nuclear. That's it. You can't do it with solar. You can't do it with wind and whatever else. So
That's a great. Yes. Well, we're going to be talking about energy next week, and that's a great topic. Renewable energy, the move away from fossil fuels. Of course, Joe Manchin, and coming from West Virginia, I have my own theories of why he's standing on certain issues because of the coal industry, and not to be facetious, but I have been getting West Virginia jokes about this. But yes, the governor of West Virginia, when responding to a tweet from Bette Midler, pulled up his dog's rear end at the State of the State address and showed it to the citizens of West Virginia and got a standing ovation. So I haven't talked to John Chambers about what his thoughts were on that, but it was not the most proudest moment for those of us from the Mountain State. So I know. I mean,
Sorry, Steve. I was laughing to myself because I know we're short of time, but I was laughing when you talk about energy because I don't know if you guys know that another oil field, another one, hasn't been given the go-ahead by the government to be developed in the off.
Yes, absolutely, David.
In the north.
Well,
And let's see, so COP26 in Glasgow might as well as not happen.
absolutely. Well, folks, it's been a wonder. We're going to move to close out, Mark. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. It's been great to have Chris and David and the team, Sasha Starr. Make sure you watch his show, Modern Investing with Sasha and Chess Stars. We've had Mark Lee and Nick Paudiva. My closing monologue today is, we've talked about vaccinations and masks and things like that, but to look at Novak Djokovic, the number one tennis player in the world, who's now being told by the other Grand Slams that if he does not get vaccinated, he may not be able to play, which would basically end the rest of his year on the tour, and also will now stop his quest to compete against Rafael Nadal for the 21st major for Djokovic, to tie the all-time record now held by Rafa Nadal. My favorite musical song is in the musical Hamilton, where he says, "Not throwing away my shot." And I find it ironic that the number one tennis player in the world, who has, been packing stadiums for years, making the greatest shots in the world, in this time is refusing to not only is refusing to take a shot. A man who makes the greatest shots. But he's doing it because he believes that only he has the right to do that with his body. And he said he will not play another Grand Slam or a professional tennis tournament if he's ever mandated to give a vaccine. Many of us in the tennis community wonder, and there are rumors rumbling, that Novak Djokovic could be announcing his retirement and that he will no longer be on the professional tour and hence end his quest to be the greatest ever. I know Rafa Nadal wants to be the greatest, but wouldn't it be nice to see him battle out Novak in another Grand Slam major to see who really is the greatest of all time? On that note, we'll be talking about that again. Hopefully Novak will not retire, but I am hearing rumors out there that he will. Looking forward to seeing you all tomorrow, and we'll be back for another great edition of World Edition from our family to yours. Thank you.